there's a lot going on with Deftones as a
A lot
band.
of their songs just like rang a bell that like I was familiar with. I was like, oh my god, this is sick.
Again, some of these songs will actually go over your head. It takes time for some of these songs to really ferment, I guess. And
I don't know what the hell that was.
here we are, back at it. I wouldn't say you're not a Deftones fan, like you yourself admittedly a Deftones fan at this point, but I think like even for me, for a while, like I feel like with Deftones, I never. It was a slow burn process up to where I'd say I am now with them. Like I never, they're actually one of those bands that like for me, I similar to some other bands, like some like almost like a Born of Osiris, almost in some ways. Like I kind of like forget about them for a little while and then realize like how sick they are every like year or two maybe. But with Deftones, it's like it's tough because like they're so obviously such a big band already, and they have that sort of like they feel like Korn or something. Like they're such a popular band that even for me, at times it's like you think that there's only what you know out there, but like this is a good example for us too because it's like there's a lot going on with Deftones as a band. Like there's a lot more to them as a band, and plenty of songs out there with them that like aren't the songs that anybody would know really potentially. But it's hard to say. Like looking at some of the views that I looked up for this video, I think I picked 3 songs that are relatively underrated for them because again, Deftones is going to pull 40, 50 million views on their decent stuff on a regular basis. So I think some of the stuff I picked here is like down in like the million-ish range, which is like, like their lower echelon stuff. But all 3 of these songs are no skippers for me. Like all 3 of these songs I would go through in a heartbeat. Also like varying a little bit across their discography a bit, kind of spreading across time with them. Again, they have like, they've been around for a while. There's lots there.
Yeah, I think so for me, like I never really like ran on my way to listen to them back in the day, but then we saw them at Rockfest, and it was like one of the last bands. It might have been like second, third last band on the last day, and like I was tired and beat up and stuff, and just kind of like making it to the end of the festival. But when they came on, like instantly, like a lot of their songs just like rang a bell that like I was familiar with. I was like, oh my god, this is sick.
Yeah.
And it was one of like most surprising like live sets. I was like, wow, these guys are amazing. And ever since within for like at least 5 years after that, I was jamming them straight. I've kind of fallen off recently. I think at least with their big songs, because I never really did the deep dive. I just kind of kept their top 10 songs, let's say. I feel like with them, you just one of those bands you can't overplay them type of thing. And I don't want to because like when one of their songs surprisingly comes on, I'm always like a little like excited for it,
Yeah.
Whereas like if I seek it out too much, I feel like I kind of lose that. So for me, that's just one of those bands I'd like to keep them in that little pocket.
For me, I think they have a really good place between being catchy and interesting. You know what I mean? Like you can just have the catchy like modern, stuff that's gonna stick with you for a couple weeks. But then they also have like for me at least, like they have enough depth to their songs and stuff that like it does permeate other parts. At least for me in my life as well. Like they're a very great band for going through shit. Obviously, like they have enough stuff that like if you're going through something, like they're gonna they got stuff for all that.
They're also really clutch for playing at like in settings where there's no metalheads.
Yeah,
Really
that's the
clutch
thing
for
too.
that.
Yeah, and also like it's very obviously they're very grungy, chill for the most part. Like you can get away with. They're almost like
Nobody says turn that off.
Yeah. If you can play Tool or like that, that kind of stuff, then you can play Deftones. But again, I feel like a lot of people know, everyone knows Change. Obviously, that's where like everybody started. Even like I'm not even gonna lie, like Change is obviously like where they blew up back in the day, and pretty much how like, I would say the majority of the people who learned about them back in the day probably came around because that's where they were getting on the radio. Like that's how I remember them back in the day. Like we used to when we used to work at we were like plowing snow back in the day. That like Change was one of the songs that would come on. So for me, I still associate with that, and that was 20 years ago, something like that.
Yep.
They do have some tendency to, maybe be stuck behind their really popular stuff. I had a similar situation with them and Sex Tape, actually. Like, I loved that song for a really long time. Sex Tape was one of my favorites, and it flew under the radar for a long time. I don't think it caught a lot of people's attention for very long.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that song.
Oh, it's great. I would. It's not underrated anymore, so I wasn't gonna. I was gonna pick it for this because it used to be underrated, but now it's not. Now it's back up to being like, it's got like 50 million views on it now or something like that. But like, it was there in it for a couple of years. Like, it had been out for a while and no one really knew about it. I loved it. That was my favorite. My favorite song for them. Still is my favorite song by them to this day. We saw them live. We saw it live. We saw them with Lamb of God, actually, or no, Gojira. A couple years ago, 2 or 3 years ago now.
Yeah.
But yeah, Sex Tape's my favorite song by them, bar none. But that was an underrated song when it first like came out. They never had like a visualizer for it before. I think it just gained some traction, and now it's huge, and rightfully so. But again, I think there's a lot more to them than that. And I still, to this day, like I'm still kind of doing my own digging with them as I go along, and I find I do skip over some songs and then catching it again later and realizing like, holy fuck, this is great. So like even and the stuff that I picked today, like I've been on this trip now for the last month or so with them again. I'm on another cycle with them, I would say, and doing more digging. And I feel like every single time I do one of these cycles with them, I find more. Like, and it's not, and it sticks. Like, it's not like all the stuff that I've been in, like Rosemary or 976 or like a bunch of other songs that like will stick over time. You've seen The Butcher. It goes on and on. None of these songs like I would ever skip. Like they're and for what it's worth, like they're, again, some of these songs will actually go over your head. I think if you sit there and listen to them like front to back on their CDs, like it takes time for some of these songs to really ferment, I guess, and become something better. But anyway, so I'm gonna start with Die Flu. This is I actually picked it at random, like, and I think they seem to have a lot of unofficial videos for their songs, like down here. Like I think I'm not the only one that has this like affinity for some of these songs that they've done that are kind of their underrated or under radar tracks. Like they still have this cult following below in the depths of Deftones that like people are still making extra content around them because they're that big of a band anyways. But I just picked a random one here because it just seems interesting and maybe it's nice. Cool. One of the themes I think is very like clear with Deftones, for me at least. Their drums and their bass are both insane. Like their drum lines and their bass lines are just like that's where the catchiness I think comes from for them in a lot of ways. But it's there's going to be a theme across I think all three of these, that their bass lines are just so crispy and like juicy bass lines that just get you going kind of. These are nice. These are going to be good tunes. So
that's probably why they stuck out to me so good live, right? That kind of stuff translates well.
Yeah, the kind of stuff that you're going to feel in your chest and like really resonates well in a live crowd. Yeah, for sure. I don't know if any of these three I've ever heard. Battle Axe, I think they might have played live before, but at least Die Flu for sure is definitely one of those underrated tracks that's worth checking out. This is a dope track. I've been bumping this for a while now, but this is one of my faves. So check it out. This is Die Flu by Deftones.
We're getting a ban for this shit. We should probably pick a different video.
Hold on. To be fair, I just picked the one video I thought like would be kind of interesting.
Somebody else just randomly made this?
Yeah, I swear to God, I've never seen this video in my life, but I like took a chance on this, and I did not know what this was gonna be. I don't know how the fuck this is a thing, and it's still up. It's fucking like great, but yeah, let's pick something else. I'm gonna pick a different video. I didn't know this was gonna be like this.
I mean, she's hot, but I don't want to get banned.
but also, like, why? I don't know. why would this? Why? I don't understand. Fair enough, I guess.
I don't know. I feel like Deftones is in that like 9 Inch Nails realm, where like good like
it's just like some sexy chick doing some shit to their song. Yeah, it works out. But yeah, let's go a little more PG than that.
How many like dweebs are just sitting in their basements watching that?
We're so down, dude. Jesus, I had no idea. I was like, oh, you know what? This will be all right. Unofficial video. All right, sweet. All right, I'll try this one instead. All right, let's try this again. Die Flu by Deftones. All right. Well,
Standard Deftones sounds like.
yeah, pretty much. Like they obviously have like their standard whimsical style to like, and mostly obviously comes from Chino and like his like moany sort of sense of things. But I think like that video is kind of interesting. I feel like a lot of Deftones songs like are probably being backed up by like, it feels like girls wanting to have like a fucking career of some sort. Like, like it seems like a common theme to have like, someone's relationship video, whatever the fuck that was. Like,
I don't know what the hell that was.
I feel like that was maybe this song is like is their song or something like that, and they just decided to have like a little like, you know what I mean?
It's very strange.
It's well, it's not the first one. Obviously, 0 for 2 and like girls wanting to show themselves off on Deftones fucking songs for whatever that means. I mean, at least that one was a little bit more PG.
Who wants to sit there and watch that though? Like, why does it have a million? I guess it has 1.5 million because of the song, but like,
Yeah, it's just because it's gotta just because.
Who cares to watch that? Does anyone care to watch that? I don't know.
My suspicion is watching that is that was they probably just did that for them, and then it just blew up on its own. Maybe I don't know why. Again, I don't know. It just feels like a very common theme.
I guess chicks probably like that kind of stuff. I don't know.
Yeah, my guess, like through all this, I think and in realizing this right here, right now, but pretty much is I think like there's probably a higher degree of female fans with Deftones than you might otherwise expect, potentially.
Yeah.
I feel like they're pretty, like, because of that whimsical sort of, like, I don't want to call it emo, but it is, right? Like it has, like, that emo-ish sort of, like, through line to it, right? Like, it's like, right on the line between, like emo.
They're definitely, like, he's definitely, like, emotional. It's, like, his singing.
Yeah, like, somewhere between, like, My Chemical Romance and Lamb of God, right? Or something like that. They're like this like weird, quasi mix of like, a harder version of, but at the same time too, I think it really also depends on where in their discography you go. Like, I think like they also went through stages of like sounding more, because it's also because of the times though too, right? Like this is like the golden age of emo, basically, when that kind of stuff was really, popular. But Deftones also evolved as well across time. Like they kind of got more like melodic at points, and then also like really early on, I would even say punk in a lot of ways. They have a lot of good mixes that like you wouldn't really be able to pigeonhole them to like one particular style.
Yeah, I think a lot of bands back then, like Deftones, Tool, I'd even put like Korn, any like things that you could sort of like put into the weird category of new metal. They call it. It's like they're all very unique in their own way. You can't really like stamp a genre on them. They're just,
Yeah, but I think at least with Deftones does still have their own particular style, even across time to some degree. But I would say of all the new metal bands, at least to my ear, I think Deftones had the most diversity. Because at least for me, I mean, maybe it's just for me having done enough of a deep dive with them to know across their albums. But although I would say,
is not considered new metal?
I guess so. But to be fair though, I feel like Slipknot has also like there's obviously the old Slipknot and then there's the new Slipknot, right? Like obviously most people consider Slipknot, pre Joey leaving the band, right? Isn't there kind of a difference there in Slipknots?
I don't know post Joey Slipknot, to be honest. I don't think.
Exactly. So my point exactly is that like Slipknot as a band really, had their, is still pretty much in their golden years, really. And outside of that, they're fine, but like no one really, they kind of didn't really evolve, in my opinion, as much.
I'm saying that old school Slipknot with Joey, they varied a lot. They had lots of soft songs.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I would say so. But they still had like.
But again, Slipknot too. Just again, all these bands back then, maybe because a lot of this stuff was sort of new. Like, it's hard to draw like band comparisons.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, one of the good themes you can have there with that song as well is really crisp drums. That seems to be a theme across like everything they've done, and they always have like a really nice like that nice bass tone that comes right off. I think like they kind of rest on the bass a lot in a lot of these songs, which I think is great. That's their style. Like a good bass and drums will set me off here. Hey, don't go anywhere. More Deftones is coming up next. Battle Axe. Great tune. Worth checking out. Stay tuned.